it's very frustrating for those of us who, the many people who want to see Ukraine win. The administration in the United States, as well as in some other countries, have been very incremental in the decision process to provide capabilities. I think partly out of a exaggerated fear of Russian response, but also a failure to appreciate and understand the theater, what's going on here and what's needed. I think that the key will be when my president says we want Ukraine to win, then I think you'll see things will pick up much more quickly. But we also have a problem in the United States and in Germany and in UK and other places. We have not, for the last 20 years, manufactured the quantities of what's needed because we didn't need it. We were in Iraq, Afghanistan. It was a different kind of conflict. It was a different requirement. And so, of course, industry is not a charity. The government has to put money into business so that businesses will hire more people and order, they have a supply chain. They have to purchase the components for ammunition. We haven't done that yet, and we're still not there yet. So hopefully the president will make the decision to start that. Same thing here in Germany where I live. But look, because I love Ukraine so much, because I have so much respect for people in Ukraine, it's also Ukrainians need to think, what were we doing the last 8 years? I mean, Ukraine should be covered with ammunition. Russia invaded, this month in 2014. That was 9 years ago. What did Ukraine do between then and now to produce more ammunition, to produce more weapons? So I'm critical of my own government, but I think Ukrainians need to take a look as we reflect on all of this. Keep in mind the missed opportunity by Ukraine to do more. Hopefully we can recover now, even though the war is where it is.
Zaluzhny said we need about 300 tanks to make our counteroffensive good. How long we still need to wait for the tanks if we're not speaking about generally about weapons, specifically about tanks?
So again, this whole process to make the decision to provide tanks of any sort was incredibly frustrating. But as you say, we are where we are. The British tanks and the American tanks actually were the key to opening up the door for the German Leopards. The German Leopard, I think, is probably the best solution for the situation because that's where you get the quickest. You get the most tanks, the different types of Leopards that are out there coming from different nations. I think you'll get more tank capability with a Leo than if you had 4 or 14 or 24 or 34 British Challengers or 31 American Abrams tanks or whatever it is. Of course, there's going to be long-term requirements as well, but in the near term, getting the capability for Ukrainian armed forces to have a armored force, a fist that could penetrate Russian defenses. The quickest way to get more is of course, with the German Leopards. And you've got the maintenance, the industrial base for the Leopard is in Europe already, close by versus UK or the United States. And I think that you have to think about what makes a tank effective, okay? It's the soldiers inside of it, obviously, the crew. That's the most important thing, the crew. And then how is it employed? It's got to be employed as part of what we call a combined arms team. So mechanized infantry, armored engineers, self-propelled artillery that go with the tanks so that they can penetrate defenses. The wrong answer would be to just sprinkle tanks all along the line and give tanks to everybody. That would be a total waste. And I think I know that the Ukrainian General Staff understands that and that they will be very clever on how they focus on a particular place to launch their offensive when it's time. Of course, the Ukrainian General Staff has been so impressive in how they understand the operational art. And so I imagine that the staff is looking at their options. They know what they have. They know what's coming. They're looking at time to train, to practice, to set the conditions. And there will be a lot of pressure to hurry up. So I think the General Staff has to be very disciplined. And they need the political leadership from President Zelensky on down to allow the General Staff, the professionals, to do this. They have to resist the pressure to attack everywhere, because there will be pressure. Because, of course, our civilian leadership wants to hurry up and liberate as much as possible. But we know from history, we understand that from what war requires, if you try to attack everywhere, if you dilute your force, then you will not have enough capability. So I trust the Ukrainian General Staff to know the right place to focus that main effort that will lead to the decisive effect that we all want.
How badly we need aircrafts now? How do you think?
Well, of course, Ukraine needed airplanes a year ago. That's, again, same story. We've taken so long to get to the point where now we are at least seriously considering additional aircraft. I wish that we had supported Poland's idea back a year ago to provide MiGs. But at least now it feels like there's some progress in the right direction on getting fixed-wing aircraft, whether it's F-16 or MiGs or whatever it is. In the meanwhile, I wish that the policy would allow training to already begin. Don't wait until the decision is made and then start training, but instead start training now. Get Ukrainian pilots that are already experienced, get them in the cockpit of a F-16 or a MiG or whatever, and begin to increase proficiency so that when the decision is made, then they can go to work right away. The aircraft would be so useful for not only what we call counter-air, to stop and destroy Russian aircraft. They can also help knock down missiles that are going towards innocent Ukrainian civilians, but they would be very helpful in supporting ground operations. So this FIST that would have air support with it would be even more effective. Would have been better to have them a year ago.
What are the main differences between the Munich Security Conference 2022 and 2023?
Well, obviously, the 2022, when I was there, it was just days before the beginning of the special military operation. Ukraine had already been at war with Russia for 8 years, but too many people still didn't think about it as war. And there were still people in disbelief that Russia would actually attack. So I think when you think about this year, and I just came back from Munich last night, of course, the intensity, the attention, the conversations was so much different. I mean, this really, people want to see Ukraine win. Still, unfortunately, you still have 3 or 4 people making comments that I think are unhelpful. When the president of France says, yes, we want Ukraine to win, but not to crush Russia. I mean, what does that mean? I mean, that's an empty, wasted statement. Or even when my own vice president says, we will stay with Ukraine for as long as it takes. What does that mean? That's not a clear statement of policy. And so that's my main concern coming out of Munich this year, was that you still have 2 or 3 nations, the